The Confluence user interface has been completely revamped in the past few months. So if you've never used Confluence before, or you haven't used it in a while, let's go over exactly how to get started. So on the very left sidebar, you'll see a For You page, and this is kind of where you land when you first open Confluence. And I actually personally never use this, and we'll go over exactly how to clean up the sidebar in just a moment. But Confluence in general is really organized into spaces and then separate pages. And a lot of what Confluence is used for is documentation, knowledge sharing, kind of like a Google Docs alternative. And I like it a lot better because it integrates with the Atlassian suite as a whole, but it also has really cool things that you could do with it that aren't available with other doc type tools. So let's go over and create our very first space. So I'll go to Spaces and then click on Create a Space. And then we'll give this space a name. We'll call this Dunder Mifflin. And we'll select an icon for it. I'll just pick something random. And then we'll select the type of space that this is. You can actually skip this entirely or just select whatever you want here, because this is just going to toggle on and off a couple of features that I'll show you how to change later anyway. So we'll leave this as defaults and we'll click next. And here's all the features that we can turn on and off. So I could go through and toggle these, and I'll show you what all of these do, and I'll make sure that they're all on for now. And we'll click Create Our Space. Should just take a moment, and all of our space has been created. We have a few template pages right out of the box, but to create a new page, if we want to start from scratch, all we have to do is click the Create button right here in the navigation section. In here, we have a ton of options, which I'll cover in just a moment, but for the most part, you'll probably mostly be using a live doc or a basic page. I'll explain the difference in a moment. I personally prefer live doc because it's a little bit easier to edit, easier and quicker to edit. So I'll go through, give this a title. Let's say I'll call this Looking for a Chair. And maybe I want to document all of my findings here, all of my links to chairs I like. And I could go through and actually start doing that directly in this document. So it's pretty much open text. I could add chair 1 here. And I could go ahead and paste in a link if I'd like to. Link here. I'll do a little bracket, link here. And I could do chair 2. Spelled that one wrong, chair 2, and then I could do another one, link here, and we could keep going and going. And as you can see, it's pretty much just an open text option or text box where we could type whatever we'd like. And obviously we have, your typical bolds, your italics, your underlines, anything that you'd like within this kind of a doc builder that you'd normally see in other places. Now where it gets really cool is with these slash commands. So if I type in slash, I have a whole bunch of options available to me that can essentially allow me to expand the functionality of what I do in this doc. And you'll see the things like your typical bold or your headings, your italics, your underlines, and everything else. So I could add a heading 1 in here, and this is going to be a little bit larger. I could add a table of contents in here. I could add dividers. I could add tables. Pretty much anything that you can use to format most different pages and page builders are going to be available for you here. These can also be completely expanded with apps and app functionality, which is super cool. But essentially, this is a doc editor that gives you the ability to create really great knowledge docs, formatted in really, really nice and beautiful ways. There's a couple of examples here that we can look at. So there's a template planned here, some tables, some colors and problem statements, scopes, emojis. This is kind of how you want to use Confluence on a daily basis, really to store and share information within your organization. Now, before we dive into the different page types, let's go ahead and clean up our sidebar because a lot of this stuff is probably never really going to be used. So in order to do that, we click the More option and then Customize Sidebar. And I'm going to remove anything that I probably won't end up using. So I'll remove maybe my recents because I don't want that. I remove Teams and Company Hub, and let's click Save. And there we go. We've cleaned up a lot of stuff that we actually don't need to see. Let me refresh that. There we go. And it makes it a lot easier for me to just jump in and start working within my actual space without needing to see all of that extra bloat. Real quick, I've implemented Jira for over 200 companies. By far, the #1 reason teams reach out to us is because they built what they thought was a great solution only to realize that nobody actually ended up using it. And if that sounds familiar, that's exactly what we help you fix. We're currently taking on new projects 4 to 6 weeks out. And if you want help implementing Jira in a way that your team will actually use, hit the first link in the description below. Now let's cover exactly what types of content we can actually create within our space. So you already saw the live doc, which essentially is a page. And the difference here is that a page can be published and unpublished. So I have this page, and I'll type in page example here. And if I have nothing in here, I'll just type in a quick test block of text, and I could click publish. Now the difference here is that now when it's published, I can't just go in and start, editing this however I'd like. So it's not quite like a Google Doc. I can't just jump in, open it, start adding text, and expect it to update. So this is really great for pieces of content that sort of need to be locked or updated in certain ways, or you just want to reference without actually just jumping in and editing it every single time. I do sometimes use these, but I do prefer live pages because I could just go into a live page and immediately start editing without having to click the edit button at the very top. So I could type in something here, and then I could jump into another page. And then in here, I have to actually click edit before I could edit anything, and then update to actually update this active page. So that's kind of the difference between those two options. And they have a slightly different icon on the left to recognize which is which. Now you could go through and actually disable these. For example, I'll go to my space settings here. And then here, there's going to be an option for features. So features, under general features, we could turn any of these options off. So let's say I never want to use standard pages. I want everybody to use live docs inside of my company. Actually, that's the only option that has to stay on. But let's say I want to do the alternative. I only want to use live or pages instead of live docs. So actually turn off live docs. And now nobody can actually go in and create a live doc. It has to be a standard page. Same things with things like smart links. I might never want to use those. That's kind of just a link or an embed to another website. I might turn that off. Blogs is kind of just updates. That's how you update things in Confluence, and you could have sort of a thread of updated things. So that's something I never personally use. Same thing with calendar. I prefer to use this in Jira. I'll toggle that off. So I'm going to toggle anything off that I'm probably not going to end up using. Slides is fairly new, which is very, very cool. I'll show you folders and the rest of these in just a moment, but I'll turn off shortcuts in apps as well. Now, the reason I like to turn these off is that it cleans up a lot of what we're doing inside of Confluence directly. So when I click create, we're met with just a few options instead of a whole bunch of them. So let's run through our different options that are actually useful to us. So folder is pretty self-explanatory. We could just type in folder, and it organizes our information into a section. And a folder cannot be opened, whereas a page can be. And a page can still have hierarchy. So if I layer these pages under this top page here, this top page I could click on and view into and see the context of, but it also has child pages. Folders essentially do the same thing, but without being able to have that top level folder actually be a page. So that's the only difference. I personally like to use folders in some cases when there's no context to add, but the only downside is that the folder icon is always going to be there, and you can't actually use an emoji, which is sometimes why I use one over the other. So that's going to be our folder option. We already have our page option. We can create with Rovo, which is Atlassian's AI, and you could kind of tell it what you want it to have in the page, and it'll craft it and create it for you. I tend not to use this because I'd rather create the page first and then collaborate with Rovo using this Ask Rovo button on the right side, telling it to update information, pull information, and do and take action on things for me. So that's kind of how I like to do it, and I really never use it. So for now, I'm just kind of collaborating with AI rather than creating with AI. Then we have whiteboards. This is super cool. If you use anything like Miro or similar tools, FigJam or the Figma whiteboard alternative, this is really cool because you could go in and have your templates in here, your whiteboards, and you don't ever have to leave Confluence. And there's direct integration here with Jira. So I could go in and actually pull this into a Jira work item. So I could click on the Jira integration, and based on this, let's say we're whiteboarding some feature ideas or bugs or whatever, all I have to do is click on an item and then create a Jira work item. I could select the site, the space that it goes to, and pull this information directly into Jira work item and create that two-way link. So very cool, a lot of really great integrations and kind of reason to use this. There's really not many features here that are lacking compared to other whiteboarding tools. I've seen a lot of companies that we work with switch over to this because it's already included, it's cheaper, and it just gets the job done with a more native feel and integration to Confluence. So those are your whiteboards. You could use it however you'd use a normal whiteboard. And the last option that is very powerful is a database. If If you've ever used Notion, you'll know what a database is, but essentially this can store and display data in a little bit more of a unique way, and then be referenced later in other pages and other spaces and other databases. And it kind of gives you a table view, but with more context and information, but also the ability to pull information a little bit better. So an example of this might be a research repository. So I'll pull up this template and you have all of your columns as fields, and then each field can be slightly unique. So a table is going to look very similar, but a table doesn't have things like drop downs. It doesn't have things like statuses, resource links, text fields. You could also even add other Confluence page links in here, statuses, Jira work items. And a lot of these things could be reorganized, refiltered. We could create multiple views for this. So I could have a gallery, for example, and I could have this table view and then a gallery view, and then I could add filters to this to show me certain things. So it's kind of like a mini or a light version of a Jira board, or maybe like a Trello board. And it gives you the ability to store and display information in slightly unique ways. So super powerful. And I use this for anything that requires any kind of like database-like information. So spreadsheets are really good. This is kind of a good alternative for that. Whenever I'm trying to reference or pull information or filter information, I will probably end up using a database over anything else inside of Confluence. So very cool. And then you could also, let's say, copy a link to this view and pull it into a page. And this is really cool because with these pages, we can then just see certain information across our databases and other Confluence pages, even Jira work items, and the actual integrations between the two work very, very well. So I could go in here, add in my view, and now this page, my page example, actually shows me my database in the view that I want to see. So if I want to see, let's say, only experiment methods, I could filter that down. Let's open up my method, and let's say I only want to see the experiment one, and then we'll create this, and then we have a filter. We could save the changes, and now this view only has this particular filter. A really good use case for this exact database is, let's say, meetings. We have multiple clients. We take all of our meetings. We could throw all of our meetings into one single database, and then that database can have a whole bunch of different views for each client. And then with each client's page, we could pull them and filter them into see only that relevant client's meetings, while everything is in one backend database. So very cool, very handy for large chunks of information that you want to filter down in other pages later. So that's pretty much it. You jump into a page, you click edit, you create new pages, you start to use this and surface this information inside of Jira for your team as a knowledge base for your customers, really anything you'd like. Well, I'll show you one really cool thing here as well, and that is the ability to share publicly. So you can click on the link for share, and you could click the copy link, which is just an internal link where you have to have an account to access this data. But you could also make this public. So you click public, you click the little check mark on the right, you copy this page, and you could literally share it with anybody in the world, and they can see this information without ever signing in. So really great for public-facing documentation, for your apps, for your software. If you have a doc to share with clients, you could do all of that with Confluence directly. And again, the real power here is the integration directly with Jira. So if you're already using Atlassian or Jira or any of the other apps, Confluence is really a great next step to include inside of that ecosystem.